So we are holding on the bottom of 102B2. 102B2. Okay, 102B2. Let's just see who just texted me. Now we can hear you. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, here we go. So, Gufa. Gemara says, let's talk about this. Yontiv shechali yos achar Shabbos. Yontiv that falls out on Motzei Shabbos. We're on 102B2. 102B2 on the bottom. Gufa, 2 lines from the bottom of 102B. Gufa, Yontiv shechali yos achar Shabbos. Yontiv that falls out on Motzei Shabbos. So we're going from Shabbos directly into Yontiv. Actually, that's this year. Erev Pesach is Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos is the Yontif of Pesach. So we're talking about this year's case. That Shabbos will be Erev. Shabbos is Erev Yontif. So when you finish Shabbos, you begin Yontif. So now, how do you handle Kiddush? Because you've got to make Kiddush and you have to make Havdalah, which means you have to make a Borei Pri Hagofen, you have to do Mekadesh Yisrael V'Azmanim, you have to be sanctify the day, you have to make Havdalah, and you have to light a candle. We don't do Psumim, we don't do the cloves, because the Neshama Yisrael doesn't go away when it goes from Shabbos to Yom Tov. We don't require the cloves to revive us. But we have 4 things going on. You've got Gefen, which means Borei Pri Hagofen, the bracha. Kiddush, to sanctify the day. Ner, the light that you light, Borei Miyorei Eish. And the last one is Havdalah itself, to separate. Havdalah, to separate between Shabbos and Yom Tov. So what's the right order? Rav says Yakna, which is Yayin. Yayin, of course, is Borei Pri Hagofen. Kuf is Kiddush. Nun is Ner, is the flame. And Hey is Havdalah. The reason for Rav is because he says Kiddush, what's coming in, is more important than what's going out. To sanctify the day that's coming in is more important than Havdalah separating from the thing that's leaving. Shmuel Omar, and Shmuel says, no. Yan Hak, meaning Yayin, Borei Pri Hagofen, Nun, Ner, the flame, Hey, the Havdalah, and then Kof, Kiddush, the Kiddush, because he holds saying goodbye to the king is more important than saying hello to the Duke. The king, of course, is Shabbos. The Duke is Yom Tov. It's much more important to go along and say goodbye to the king that's leaving, and then to first say hello to the Duke. So what do? You make Yayin, Borei Pri Hagofen, because Borei Pri Hagofen, regardless, has to be said over a cup of wine. You then do the Ner and the actual Havdalah saying goodbye to Shabbos, and then you'll do the Kiddush to sanctify the new day that's coming in, the holiday, the Yom Tov. Okay, we're now on today's daf. Kuf Gimel, 103A1. The Rabba Omar, and Rabba says Yahank, which of course is Yayin, that's the Yud, Borei Pri Hagofen. Hey is Havdalah, Ner, Nun is Ner, and Kuf is Kiddush. Because Rabba is saying, like Shmuel, that Havdalah should come before. Right? That he says that, what do you call it? That Havdalah should come before. Saying goodbye to the king comes before saying hello to the Duke. Right? But he'd like to have a break between Havdalah and Kiddush. So he makes a break. He starts with the wine, has Havdalah, then puts the flame after the Havdalah, the ner after the Havdalah, and then he makes Kiddush. The Levi Amar, and Levi says, Kanya, which is Kiddush, ner, Yayin, Bari Priyagofen, and then Havdalah. Because
Like
Levi holds like Rav. It's much more important for Kiddush. What's coming in is much more important than what's going out. So therefore, Kiddush should come first. But in order for the Boire Pri Hagofen, right, the Yayin, Boire Pri Hagofen, the bracha that we make on every cup of wine, to be connected to both to the Kiddush and to the Havdalah. Since both Kiddush and Havdalah require a cup of wine, but we're going to only make one bracha because we're only dealing with one cup of wine of Boire Pri Hagofen. I'd like that the Boire Pri Hagofen should be as clear as possible that it's going on both. Side the Kiddush that I'm starting with because that's what's coming in. Side the Havdalah that I'm ending with because that's what's leaving. But the Boire Pri Hagofen should be as close as possible to the two of them. The Rabbanon Amri, the Rabbanon say, Kina, which is Kiddush, Yayin. That means first you sanctify, then you say Boire Pri Hagofen, then you do the Ner, Boire Mi'areish, and then you do the Hey, Hamavdil. What's the reason for the Rabbanon? The Rabbanon also hold like Rav, that you should be Mekadosh what's coming in first before you separate from the day that is past. But they want that the hefsek between Kiddush and Havdalah should be obvious, that there should be a clear break between the sanctification of the day coming in and the Havdalah of the day, of the day going out. So they add in an extra piece in between the Kiddush and the Havdalah. Mar berei de Rabbana Omar, Mar, the son of Rabbana, says, Nakia, flame, ner, Kiddush, Yayin, Boire Pri Hagofen, and Havdalah. Because he also holds like Rav. But he wants that bracha of Boire Pri Hagofen to be as close as possible to both the Kiddush and the Havdalah. So he changes it accordingly. Okay? So in other words, he puts the Kiddush before the Havdalah, and he puts the Boire Pri Hagofen right in between the Kiddush, the sanctification of the new day, and Havdalah, the Havdalah that you do on the day that's left. Marta, Berei, Marta Oma Mishmei de Rabbi Yeshua, not Nahak, switch it to Nihak, which is Ner, Havdalah, Yayin, Kiddush. Because of obviously Marta obviously holds like Shmuel, that first you say goodbye to the king before you come in and say hello to the duke. The king being Shabbos, Yom Tif is only the duke. So, in this case, what does he do? He says, Ner, Havdalah, Yayin, Kiddush. On the other hand, he too wants the Boire Pri Hagofen to be connected to both the Havdalah and Kiddush, because that bracha is going on both. So he sticks the Boire Pri Hagofen right in between them, between the Havdalah and the Kiddush. And he starts off with the Ner, because not only that, the Ner you're also getting immediate benefit from. The thing you're getting immediate benefit from, you should make a blessing on it first. Okay, very nice. Now that we got that, we've actually gotten past the most hardest part of today's Gemara. Sholach le'avu de Shmuel Rebbe, the father of Shmuel, sent a question to Rebbe.
Yitzchak.
Amdu Rabbeinu saved the Havdolah's Hayach. Instruct us what is the right order for Havdalah when Yom Tov falls out on Motzei Shabbos. Yes, Charlie. What?
No, so
everything's good. Okay.
So
Yomdenu Rabbeinu say that.
So this Yom Tov,
we're going to get to it. Patience.
Okay, got it.
All right. Patience. I'm not giving, the Gemara doesn't give away the story right away. You got to work it out till the last chapter. So here we go. Sholach le'avu Shmuel Rebbe. The father of Shmuel sent the following question: Yamdu Rabbeinu Seida Abdullah Seif. Instruct us. What's the order? Charlie's question. What is the order of Abdullah? Like this Yontif coming up when Shabbos rolls right into Yontif. Now, I thought the question you were going to ask me, Charlie, is they didn't know. It's not the first time. Like only when Abu Shmuel asked the question to Rebbe, that's the first time. But the answer is very similar to our time. When did Rebbe live? Rebbe lived in 100 years of the Churban Bayis Sheni, the first Holocaust, when millions of our people were killed and we were dispersed throughout the world. So believe it or not, just like now, nobody could really remember what took place before the Churban. If that sounds strange to you, the reality is, ask anybody whose family came out of the Holocaust. All the traditions, etc., from the Alta Haim, from the old world, had to be reconstituted. My grandfathers essentially came up with new minhagim after the war with the rabbis that they connected with after the war. And that's why our minhagim, for an example, the Zimmerman minhagim, are a mixture of Hasidish minhagim and Oberlander minhagim and more Yekisha minhagim. We're like a big turret because our grandfathers grabbed it. My grandfather grabbed pieces from here and from here or from there because everything after the war was a mess. And that's the truth. There were famous stories of Hasidic Rebbes in the 1950s that made sure that they sat with the older survivors and sat with them and they wrote down what they remembered from the Rebbe's father and grandfather and great-grandfather about them in Hogin, because things got lost. And that's what happened here. Things got lost. So the father of Shmuel asked Rebbe, Yamdenu Rabbeinu Seida Abdullah Seichel. What is the right way to do Havdalah and Kiddush when Yontif falls on a Motzei Shabbos, like it's going to do this year, from Shabbos into Erev Pesach into Pesach? Shalach lei kach amar Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yossi shama mishum aviv. You notice how it says it. So Rabbi Yishmael ben Yosef says in the name of his father. Shama mishum Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, who says it in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, the son of Chananya, Nahak. That the proper order is Ner, Havdalah, wine, Yayin, and Kiddush. In other words, like Shmuel, first say goodbye to the king, and then say hello to the day that's coming in, but try to put the bracha, B'rei Priya Gofen, as close to both the Kiddush and the Havdalah, because that bracha is going on both. Which, Charlie, is not, this is not the way we do it. This is not the way we do it. Just keep going. Amar Rabbi Chanina, Marshal to Rabbi Yeshua ben Chanina. The marshal, the parable is what Rabbi Yeshua ben Chanina said. Ramelach sheyoytze v'iparkos nichnes. It's the case of the king that's leaving and the duke that is arriving. Melavin es hamelech. First we escort the leaving king, the departing king. V'achakach yoytze likras iparkos. And then afterwards we go to greet the duke. So first we do Havdalah to be Malava, to say goodbye to the Shabbos, which is Medal to a king or a queen, right? The Shabbos queen. And only afterwards do we go and Mekadesh and sanctify and say hello to the incoming Yontif, which is the Duke. So now, Freit Reb Charlie, my Allah, what do we have concerning this question? Abaya says, Yakna Yak Zina, which is what? Yayin, Baripriagofen, Kiddush, which is Mikadosh Yisrael Azmanim, Shechiyanu, Zaman, the Zion means Zaman, Shechiyanu, then we have a ner, a flame, and then we have Havdalah, Virava Ama, Yaknahaz, and now we're getting to the way we do it. Amarava Yaknahaz, Yayin, Baripragofen, Kof, Kiddush, then ner, then you light the Barimeresh, then you have the Hey, Kodesh, Kodesh, separate from the holy to the lesser holy, and then Zion is Zaman, Shechiyonu B'Kimonu B'Kiyonu Lazman Hazeh. And now we're on 103.82, the Hilkasa Kiraba, and the halacha is like Rabba. So this is the famous, which you will hear from Rabbi Gibber. We, Matzah Shabbos Pesach, at the Seder, will do Yaknahoz. Yaknahoz. Exactly, that's the famous saying, Yaknahoz. Yayin, Baripriagofen, Kiddush, sanctifying the day, Yak Ner, Barimiyareish, Havdalah, Hamabda ben Kodesh LeKodesh, and Zaman, Shechiyanu V'Kimonu V'Giyanu Lazman Hazeh, and that is what we do today. So in other words, we really go ahead and we go with the idea that first you say hello to what's coming in, what's in front of you, and not what's in back of you. And that's a famous lesson in life. Always focus with what's on what's in front of you while remembering what came before. But that's the focus. So now, says the Gemara Vaita, Rav Huna bar Yehuda ikla lebei Rava. Rav Huna bar Yehuda was visiting the house of Rava on a regular Matzah Shabbos. And he was there when Rava made Havdalah. And they brought before him for a regular Havdalah a flame and spices, like we have, right? The besamim, the spices. He saw that Rava first benched abisamim, first on the fragrant spices, and then on the flame, which is exactly what we do today. We first do Bayre Minei B'Samim, and then we do Bayre Mi'arei Ha'esh. Amalei. So after he finished saying Abdullah, Rav Huna ben Yehuda said to Rava, B'ha Bein Beis Shammai and Bein Beis Hillel, Ma'ar Bereisha B'hada B'Samim, but both Shammai and Hillel, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that first you make the bracha on the flame, and afterwards you make the bracha on the spices. No mahi, where is this? The Tanya, because we learned in the Mishnah. In Mesechtes Brachos, Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis, Beis Shammai Yoimrim Ner Umozain B'Samim V'Abdallah. He goes like this. You make a blessing over the flame, and then Birchas HaMozain. That means if you were eating a meal and it extended from Shabbos into Motzei Shabbos, you make a bracha over the flame, then Birchas HaMozain, then the bracha on the Psamim, Bayre Minei B'Samim, and then Abdullah. Ubeis Hillel Amrim, Ner B'Samim, Umozain V'Abdullah. First you go ahead on the flame, Bayre Mi'arei Eish, then Bayre Minei B'Samim, and then Bayre Minei B'Samim, then Birchas HaMozain, and then Abdullah. So you see, either way, both of them hold. The bracha on the flame comes before the blessing on the spices. On the Rabba Basrei, my Rabba responded after him and he said, Rameir, that this Mishnah is Rameya because the Mishnah in Brachos brings this Beis Shammai Beis Hillel anonymously and Stam Mishnah is Rameir. Abu Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda says in a Baraisa, Yehuda says in a Baraisa over there in the Tosefta, over there in Brachos, Beishami Beisil did not disagree that in the case of somebody who has 1 cup of wine, and therefore he's using 1 cup of wine to both cover his Havdalah and Birchas Hamazon, benching. Because remember, we learned yesterday that the proper way to do benching, especially when you have a zimun, is al hakois, over a cup of wine. Okay, so when you only have 1 cup of wine, so you're trying to kill, in the words of my father yesterday, 2 birds with 1 stone. You're trying to cover your Birchas Hamazon obligation over wine and your Havdalah over wine. Right? That what? Al Hamazon Shu B'tchila, that regarding Birchas Hamazon that's recited at the beginning, Al Havdalah Shu B'sayif, and regarding the Havdalah that it's recited at the end. Because that's easy. Because what does Rabbi Yehuda hold when you come into Shabbos eating the meal? You have to put aside the table, and because you can't eat once Shabbos arrives, you have to make Kiddush in order to eat. He also holds that at the end. From Shabbos into the weekdays. He said if the weekday comes and now the time for Havdalah has arrived, you're not allowed to keep on eating, because you're not allowed to start eating your weekday meal, your Malava Malka, before you make Havdalah. So how do you have to do it? You have to first bench. Finish the meal you just did, and only then do you make Havdalah and allow yourself to go further. So you first use this 1 cup of wine for benching, then you turn around and use it for Havdalah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Sai Beis Shammai, Sai Beis Hillel, they all hold that. Al now nechlaku, on what are they arguing? Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, al ha'ma'or v'al ha'psomim, regarding the order of the bracha on the flame and all the spices. Beis Shammai omrim ma'or v'achar kach p'somim. He says, first you make a bracha on the flame and afterwards on the psomim. Beis Hillel omrim p'somim v'achar kach ma'or. But Beis Shammai says first you make on the psomim and afterwards on the flame. V'omer Rabbi Yochanan nahagu ha'am, and the world, the people act, Beis Hillel v'aliba de Rabbi Yehuda, according like Rabbi Beis Hillel into the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, which is in fact what we do. What do? We make a Braya Priya Gofen, we then make a bracha on the psomim, on the spices, then on the flame, and then we make Havdalah. The reason for this, one of the reasons is that there is a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. What's the bracha on the flame? As you all know, we make bracha boirei ma'orei ha'esh. Boirei, we make a bracha on ma'orei, on the various lights of the flame. Beis Hillel says we look at the flame, and what do we see when I look at the flame? I see a yellow light, I see a red light, I see a blue light, right? The flame has different colors. It's one of the reasons why we use a torch, meaning something with more than 1 wick, 2, 3 wicks, so that it gives a bigger light. Ma'orei ha'esh, right? The lower part is one color, the middle part is another color, the other part, the many different colors of fire. Beis Shammai says that's not the bracha we're making. The bracha we make is Boirei Ma'or Ha'esh. We're making it on the concept of fire, because the Jewish story about fire is that Motzei Shabbos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught other Mauritian about fire, how to bang 2 rocks together and create fire. He taught him the secret of fire, Motzei Shabbos. Hashem Yisparach taught the secret of fire, as opposed to the Avodah Zarah, the idolatry of Zeus and the Greeks, which was that the gods, quote unquote, hid fire from the people. And it was Prometheus who stole the fire from Zeus and brought it down to the people. Chatz v'shalom Klal Yisrael says that Motzei Shabbos HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvodo ba'atzmo came and of course taught his people, taught the world about fire. So Beis Shammai says Ma'or ha'esh, we're making a blessing on the concept of fire. That's brilliant, that's unbelievable. Beis Hillel, as always, says, nah, that's too esoteric. We're going to look at the world as it is. Ma'or ha'esh, we're just making it on the fire. So he says the summon come first because Shabbos is leaving and you're getting so depressed from it. So you should smell this clothes first to be mechai yourself, and then we'll make a blessing on the actual flame in its many different colors. The Shammai says no. First, we're going to celebrate the idea of Motzei Shabbos. Baruch Hu introduced us to the concept of fire, and after that, we'll take care of our depression that the Shabbos is now leaving. Anyways, further. Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba ikli lebei Rava. Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba came to visit Rava. Chazinu deborah borei pri in akosek kama. We're now on 103. Yes.
Yitzchak.
Yes.
There's one There's one important thing that you should mention. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Nohagu." Yes. Which implies that it would be just a minute to go. He didn't say halacha ke Beis Hillel. So
very good.
So you would think that you could do either way you want, according to a minute. So look at Tosfos. Look at the Tosfos. V'omar Rabbi Yochanan nohagu. You see it?
Yes, let me
go to the bottom.
Which Tosfos is this?
Go to the bottom of the Tosfos. V'hai nohagu.
Yeah. What does he say?
It says v'hai nohagu is loy have kahai nohagu the perik pasuk the Tanis the meforish the oruye loy morinen. We don't paskin like it, but we of the loy. Machinen b'yadayim. If you do it differently, we're not moicha. We don't
accept.
So what Tosfos is saying that when Rabbi Yochanan said nohagu over here, it's not like a regular nohagu. He meant that the halacha is like Beis Hillel.
Very good. Shkayach Ta, did not see that Tosfos. Thank you. And what my father is really saying,
because he should have said halacha ke Beis Hillel.
Right, but it isn't.
But
it isn't.
So the Tosfos is saying it doesn't really mean nohagu like a minute. It means that it's an halacha. Right.
It means it's a halacha, but I will even tell you further. I think Tosfos is coming to tell us something even greater than this. What he called it's coming to tell us minig Yisrael dinhu. The minig, the traditions of Yisrael are a din, are a halacha. If somebody has a tradition, it absolutely becomes the law. Because the truth is, the candle and the psumim are not Havdalah. They're not Havdalah. You know what Havdalah is? Saying the following word. Hamavdol ben kodesh l'chol. Right? But which means that in fact, if you went ahead and skipped Moirei Ha'esh and Boirei Minei B'samim, and you just said Hamavdol ben kodesh l'chol ben oil l'chosh ben Yisrael ha'amim, you will have done Havdalah. You will have done Havdalah.
And what's about in Shemona Esrei?
Patience. Very good. The Gemara is going to ask about the Shemona Esrei. Very good, Charlie. You're right on the money. Very good. So, because what Charlie is asking, Motzei Shabbos, we say, Ata Chaynan Tonu, right? we're mavdu right here. So the Gemara is actually going to ask, if I did it in shul, why am I doing it again at home? Exactly. But in saying what you just said, Charlie, that means the bracha on the flame and the bracha on the psamim are not really Havdalah. It is the place where we put it, because Matzah Shabbos HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught us about fire, so that's the place to make a bracha on fire. And the Neshama Yisera, the extra soul that we get our jobs is leaving, so we need the psamim to revise ourselves. But if you didn't do it, so like my father's daddy, what Taisus is really saying, daddy, is that this is really, really, really a minig. It's got nothing to do with Abdullah. It's a total minig. But guess what? If you don't do it right, just give me 1 second. Toby, I'm giving Shir. You got to wait a few minutes, then I'll take a look. Yeah. So you understand? So the whole issue here, this is such a minig. I might think it's a free-for-all. Says Tosfos, Minhag Yisrael Dinu. And in fact, there is nowhere among Klal Yisrael. In Klal Yisrael, everybody has different minhagim, but not on this. Everybody does Pesachim first, and the Ner second, and everybody does it Matzah Shabbat. It's a big deal, as you know. You know, there are people, you can actually go online and you can see Havdalahs all over the world. People sing to it, people play music at it, because it's a big deal. Okay? So I think Taisus is coming to even say something more. This is a case where it is essentially completely a tradition. It's not even the halacha, because the halacha is only Havdalah. Whereas Charlie said, well, you even do it in shul. So what is this? This is all just Bichas Nehene, praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that and what do you call, and even in this we say, don't play around with tradition. Or to quote Fiddler on the Roof, tradition, right? Because that has always been the underlying yesod of Klal Yisrael. Says the Gemara Vayta, Rav Yaakov bar Abba Ikla Lebei Rava. Rav Yaakov bar Abba visited the house of Rava. V'chazi de Baruch B'Barei Pri Hagofen Akosa Kama. And he saw that Rava made a bracha of B'Barei Pri Hagofen on 103.83. We're on the bottom of the Yom now. And Rava recited the bracha of B'Barei Pri Hagofen over the first cup of wine that he drank, the cup over Kiddush, the Hadar, and then he repeated B'Barei Pri Hagofen, Akosa de bracha, over the cup of wine that they brought for him for benching, for Birchas Hamazon. In other words, he started the meal by making Kiddush over wine. Then, after they ate the whole meal, they got to the end of the meal, after dessert, and they sat down to do Birchas Hamazon, and what did they do? Like we do. They brought him another cup of wine, he benched, and after Birchas Hamazon, what did he do? He made a bracha of B'Barei Pri Hagofen, like we do, right? So says the Gemara, the Ishti, and he drank from it. Amalei, seeing that Rabbi made another bracha at the end, after benching, Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba said to him, Lama Allah, kulahai, why did you need to make all these brachas? Habaruch Lamar Chadazimna, you already said it once. Why are you benching? Because you ate. How were you able to eat? Because you made Kiddush over wine. When you made Kiddush, you made a B'Barei Pri Hagofen. So that B'Barei Pri Hagofen is going on the whole meal, which by Jews includes Birchas Hamazon. So you shouldn't have to make a B'Barei Pri Hagofen on the kos by Birchas Hamazon. Amalei, Rabbi said to Rabbi Yaakov, Ki havinen bei Reish Galusa, hachi havinen. When we were eating in the house of the Reish Galusa, of the Reish Galusa, this is what we did. Right there. Tradition. This is what we saw. This is what I do. Amalei, says Rabbi Yaakov to Rava, Teinach bei Reish Galusa, havi oven. Okay, that makes sense that you did that by the residents of the Reish Galusa, the Suffolk Maisilo, Suffolk Loy Maisilo. Because we were in doubt whether he was going to bring you more wine or less wine. In other words, after we made Kiddush, we were in somebody else's home. How do I know if he was going to bring wine for you in the middle of the meal? I don't know. I don't know if he was going to bring wine at the end to make Birchas Hamazon over wine. But I'm not in charge. But in your own house, what? Happened in your own house.
Was a Hesaradas.
Right.
He was Messiah.
Not yet. There wasn't so much. No, Daddy, it's not his Siach Das. No, you see here, before, right now, here we're asking the question. In the house of the Reish Galusa, where I'm not in charge, right? I'm not in charge. So I don't know if they're bringing me wine or they're not bringing me wine. I'll give you an example. You go eat Friday night at the club in Boca Grove, right? There's a menu. Nowhere on that menu does it say they're going to bring you wine during the meal. All you're getting is Kiddush. All you know is you're getting grape juice or wine to make Kiddush. You don't know what's going to happen in the middle of the meal. So since you have an uncertainty, you cannot connect your first bracha with the uncertainty of whether wine is coming or not. So it's not even Mesiach Das. It's not that his mind went off of it. It's that his mind is not even settled on whether he's going to get more wine or not. So each new wine that he gets is a new thing to him. Mashenkin in your own home. But here in your own home, you know certainly what you're going to do. That you got plenty of wine. That you're going to drink wine during the meal. If that's the case, then what are you telling me? Why do you have to make another Bayer Priya Gofen when you use a kais by Birchas Hamazon? It's all part of one meal. Amalei, he said, Ana Abdi Kitamud de Rav. Because I behave like the accordance with the Talmidim, the disciples of Rav. The Rav, Beruna, Rav Chanana. Talmid de Rav, how you? Because Rav Beruna and Rav Chanana, the Talmidim of Rav, how Yosef Besuda were once sitting at a meal. We're now on Amid Bays, Kof Gimel Amid Bays, 103b, Call Alayu Rav Yabe Saba, and Rav Yabe Saba was attending them. Amrule, they said to him, Havlo b'nivrei, and we will recite Birchas Hamazon, we will bench. L'soif, in the end, they changed their mind. Amrule, Havli b'nishtei. You know what? We're not ready to bench it. Just bring us more wine, not for benching. Bring us more wine to drink. We're going to drink wine with our dessert. Amalahu, hachi amarav, chibadi amrisu, havlo v'nivrech, that once you say, give us wine so that we can now bench. In other words, the meal is over, we're ready to bench. Istu l'chula mishte, becomes also to drink anything else. You can't drink anything else unless you make another Boire Priya Gofen. My timer, the Achsiu Datayu, because you have diverted your mind from drinking. This is the Mesiach Das. By saying, I'm ready to bench, it meant in your mind you said, okay, it's over. Now you turn around and say, you know what? Let's continue the meal. Why are we rushing? No, that requires a new Boire Priya Gofen. Now we have a story. Amei and Ravashi was sitting at a weekday meal. It was a regular day. It was a Thursday, and they were sitting for a meal. Because Ayu Rav Acha the Rava, and Rav Acha the son of Rava was their waiter. Amrina Baricha Kisa B'Kisa. During the course, Ameimar made a bracha Boire Priya Gofen on every single cup of wine he drank. So if he drank 10 cups of wine during this meal, he made 10 brachas of Boire Priya Gofen. Mazutra Berech Akasa Kama Bakasa Basri. Mazutra only made a bracha of Boire Priya Gofen on the first cup that he drank and the last cup that came along with Birchas Hamazon. That bracha here at the end, he also made a Boire Priya Gofen. Rav Ashi birech hakasek. Rav Ashi made a bracha only on the first cup of wine at the beginning of the meal. The Sulai birech, and they didn't make any more by the Pri Hagafos, even on the cup for Birchas Hamazon. Amalei Rav Acha bar Abba. Rav Acha bar Abba said to them, Anan, come on, David. According to whom are you guys acting? Each one of you is doing something different. Ameima Amar. Ameima said, I made a bracha on every single cup that I drank because I kept changing my mind. I drank the first cup and I said, that's it. I'm only having one cup of wine. Then I said, let me have a second. Then I said, let me have a third. So each time was a brand new thought about drinking. A brand new thought about drinking requires a brand new Bari Pri Hagafos each time. Mazutra, I made a bracha only on the first cup and the last cup. Anan ka'avdi k'talmidei de Rav. I acted like the Talmidim of Rav. That what? That I drank during the meal relied upon my first bracha, but the moment I needed to benching itself is the break. Once I did a benching itself, Birchas Hamazon is the break of the meal, so that when I make a Bari Pri Hagafos afterwards on that place, I got to make a Bari Pri Hagafos. The Rav Ashi says, one second, Rav Ashi Omar, lays the Talmid of Rav. But the halacha does not accord with the Talmid of Rav. And he says, the whole Yontav Shechaliyos Achar Shabbos, like this year, when Yontav falls out after Shabbos, like this Erev Pesach Shabbos, and Pesach comes in on Shabbos, Rav, Yakna, and Rav held, what do? Yayin, Bari Pri Hagafos, Kiddush, Mekadesh Yisrael, Azmanim, Ner, and Havdalah, right, over one, and he says you do it all over one and the same cup. Now, in that case, Rav did not require a new Bari Pri Hagafos on Havdalah. He ends with Havdalah. Why then would his Talmidim require a new Hagafos after the reciting of Birchas Hamazon? You see over here that Rav holds when Yontif comes in on Motzei Shabbos, you start with Bari Pri Hagafos and then you do Kiddush, Ner, Havdalah, and you don't make a bracha of Bari Pri Hagafos after Havdalah, even though there's a separation between the Kiddush and the Havdalah. Says the Gemara V'Lohi. That's not a good comparison. Some Okadata Mishmate. In the case of Birchas Hamazon itself is the most obvious diversion of your thought processing to drink. By doing Birchas Hamazon, by benching, you're saying the meal is over, I'm not drinking anymore. So any drinking that takes place after Birchas Hamazon, by definition, is a brand new situation. Over here by Yakna, by Yayin, Kiddush, Ner, Havdalah, right? It's all one bundle. You meant for your Yayin to go on the Kiddush and Havdalah. That's why you don't need another bracha. Okay, I think we're going to stop right over here.